Hi, I'm Mark, and today I want to talk about the visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in London. Because Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had landed in London after visits to Germany and France. There, the British government assured him of numerous anti aircraft missiles and hundreds of combat drones. Zelensky visited Great Britain in February already. At that time, he had met Sunak at Downing Street in London, delivered a speech to the British Parliament, and was greeted by King Charles III and received for an audience. The UK is indeed one of Ukraine's main supporters. In January, Great Britain was the first country to agree to supply main battle tanks. 14 Challenger 2 tanks were to be given to Kiev, and other countries followed suit, including the United States and Germany. Britain has also supplied missiles to Kiev and is training around 15,000 Ukrainian soldiers on its territory. And Britain is once again significantly expanding its military support for Ukraine. A new package includes hundreds of anti-aircraft missiles, as I said, and hundreds of combat drones with a range of more than 200 kilometers, as the government announced in London on Monday during the visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. This would allow the unmanned missiles to reach targets on the Ukrainian Black Sea peninsula of Crimea, which was annexed by Russia in 2014. Britain had previously provided longer-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak received Zelensky for talks at the Chequers country estate in northwest London. The front lines of Putin's war of aggression may be in Ukraine, Sunak said at the meeting, but the ruptures extended all over the world. The world must not disappoint Ukraine, said Sunak. On the occasion of President Zelensky's visit to Great Britain, the British government announced further arms deliveries. And in addition to the mentioned anti-aircraft missiles, Ukraine is indeed also set to get hundreds of drones. And Great Britain has promised Ukraine further extensive arms supplies in drones, missiles, and much more. And this was announced by the British government on the occasion of this visit. And as I said, it's not the first time that Zelensky was in Britain. And while they were in Chequers, or even before, Sunak even greeted Zelensky with a big hug when he arrived. And he compared him to the British Prime Minister during World War II, Winston Churchill. In the same way, your leadership and the courage and steadfastness of your country are an inspiration to all of us today. And Zelensky wrote on the online platform Twitter that significant negotiations should be conducted personally and in delegations. As I said, it's Zelensky's second visit to Britain since the Russian attack on Ukraine. And Sunak received the guest from Ukraine in the same room from which Prime Minister Winston Churchill used to encourage his countrymen during the Second World War. And that's why he gave this comment with the courage and steadfastness and the inspiration to all of us today. And before Zelensky now came to the UK, he visited Rome, Berlin, and Paris over the weekend, where he had campaigned for further support in building a fighter jet coalition. Germany and France also promised further arms deliveries. I talked about this in one of my latest videos already. Sunak said Ukraine's resistance to Russia is currently at a decisive moment. They need the sustained support of the international community to resist the barrage of relentlessness and indiscriminate attacks. Some English words are really tough. The new combat drones should have a range of up to 200 kilometers, as said, and last week the British delivered the Storm Shadows. By the way, if you want to know more about the Storm Shadows, this week's video on my military channel is about the British Storm Shadow missiles. So if you are more interested, have a look there. And they have a longer range than the HIMARS, by the way. And this would allow Ukraine to target previously unreachable areas such as the occupied Crimean Peninsula. On the other hand, the internationally recognized territory of Russia would not be attacked, as Zelensky promised again. But Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Russia saw the deliveries extremely negatively, but that the weapons could not significantly influence the course of the military special operation, as they still call the war. Before his British visit to the British Isles, Zelensky had met Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin and French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris. He had repeated that Ukraine was also dependent on Western fighter jets. Scholz and Macron, however, remained cautious on this topic. The British government has not yet indicated its approval of the delivery of Western combat aircraft, but it does offer training for Ukrainian pilots. After their meeting, Sunak and Zelensky said they had discussed fighter jets and reiterated their intention to form a fighter jet coalition together. Zelensky held out the prospect of important decisions. In the near future, you will hear some, I think, very important decisions, but we still have to work on them a little, he said. Ahead of his arrival in the UK, he also held talks in Rome, and shortly before Zelensky's visit, the German government had also promised Ukraine further arms deliveries worth 2.7 billion euros. But the Kremlin has sharply criticized not only the British military aid to Ukraine, but they still remain confident in the war of the aggression. And that is really ridiculous. This Peskov is, of course, the main Kremlin propagandist. But when you sometimes listen to what's coming there, it's closer to ridiculous than sad or something. Of course, the delivery of arms would lead to further destruction in Ukraine, says Peskov. For Ukraine, history only makes it that much harder. Due to the unsatisfactory course of the war for Moscow, tensions within the military have recently increased, specifically between the Ministry of Defense and the head of the Russian mercenary unit Wagner, that is Yevgeny Prigozhin. On Monday, Peskov also commented on media reports that Prigozhin had offered Kiev to betray positions of Russian soldiers in exchange for a withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the embattled city of Bakhmut. That sounds like another fake news, as Peskov dismissed the speculation. And meanwhile, Poland has received the first part of the 2019 agreed delivery of US HIMARS multiple rocket launchers, which have a range of about 300 kilometers. Their defense minister Mariusz Blaszczak said at the handover in Warsaw that the system had proven itself in Ukraine. But after the talks with Sunak, Zelensky was, as I said, also optimistic about a possible delivery of fighter jets. We want to build this jet coalition, I'm very positive, Zelensky said. We've talked about it, and I think you'll be hearing about it in the very near future. And so that's why he said there's only little to work on still. But Sunak stressed that Britain wants to train Ukrainian pilots on Western jets quite soon. We will be an important part of the coalition of states that will provide this support to Vladimir and Ukraine, said the head of government. But that is not easy. It's not just about providing planes, it's about training pilots and all the logistics involved, and the UK can play a big role in that, Sunak said. A spokesman for Sunak made it clear a little later that Great Britain had no plans to deliver fighter jets to Ukraine. There are no plans for that. That's what he said when he was asked if Britain would supply fighter jets to Ukraine. Ukrainians have decided to train their pilots on F-16s, and you will know that the RAF does not use them, the spokesman said. Great Britain has also not made any commitments to deliver fighter jets. However, Prime Minister Sunak expressed his belief that the new arms shipments would support Ukraine's planned offensive. The Ukrainian military advanced last week in the region around the particularly fiercely contested Bakhmut. The operation continues, and that was said by the commander of the ground forces, Colonel General Alexander Syrsky. The advance of our troops towards Bakhmut is the first successful offensive operation to defend the city. That's what he said on the Ukrainians' military telegram channel. However, according to the government in Kiev, Russia is sticking to its plan to conquer Bakhmut. For this purpose, new attack troops would be sent to the outskirts of the city. That was said by Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar on Telegram as well. And so we will talk about this topic in combination with the UK very often still. I'm quite sure about this. But despite there's one troll around I haven't blocked, but I sometimes delete the comments because they're too ridiculous. Trying to bring fake news with the numbers and twist numbers and stuff like that. I'm not going into the whataboutism stuff. The UK is doing a good job in providing, and it doesn't matter on what place of countries anyone is, of those helping Ukraine. That is something where the British government is doing a good job, at least. They mess up a lot of things, but in this case, they are at least doing a good job. And this channel is based on facts and not on some fiction or headlines you find somewhere. And so I have to criticize this government a lot because there is a lot to criticize. But if they do something good, I will tell you as well. And the aid for Ukraine is something very good they're doing. And I hope they continue doing this. And to be a little bit more relaxed for the remaining part of the video, I just want to tell you it's Wednesday. And that means today it's book day on Outside Views Books. And this time it's a British author. So have a look over. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.